As we head into fall, awards season officially begins. All the awards contenders start to come out, first on the festival circuit, and then a staggered release in theaters. That's why the Oscars are so late, you might recall, because they want you to go during the dead zone of January and February to go see all the smaller films that have then been nominated. I still think the Oscars are too late. What do you think? I think, it's ridiculous, especially since there are so many awards shows at this point that it's almost a foregone conclusion who's going to win on the big day. But it is what it is. However, because the Oscars are a machine, we already have the nominees coming into focus. Because we already have a stage where the players are starting to emerge. So that's what we're going to discuss today. I'm going to tell you some of the films that you're rooting for, whether or not they have a shot. And I'm also going to put some films on your radar. So when they start to trickle into theaters, you'll be ready to pounce and check them out for yourself. You won't be late to the party. You'll see them right away and be able to tell everybody your thoughts. All right, so just as last year's strikes have wreaked havoc on this year's release schedule, they're having an effect on the awards race as well. Less films, less of the usual contenders, which, like we recently saw with the Emmys, could create some very interesting and exciting nominees. I hope so. It's always more fun when there are some game changers. Who's got a shot at the gold? Today, as I said, we're going to take a look at the films who already have Hollywood talking, although, of course, never count out last-minute surprises. Some of these films have not even officially been reviewed or even debuted, and a lot of their Oscar fortunes will depend on critics and audience reactions. All right, so first up, even audiences, because, they want people to tune in for the Oscars, so that always has a little bit of a play as well. All right, so first up, blockbusters, because I know a lot of these movies are the ones that you're rooting for. They typically don't get a lot of respect during awards season, with a few exceptions, of course, that we've always been very excited about, although sometimes they get nominated and they don't actually win. It's tough for blockbuster fans. But this year, again, because it's a smaller group of films in contention, maybe there's a way for some of these blockbusters to break through, especially for those that are sequels where the previous films have a history with Oscar. So Dune Part 2. Part 1, big awards contender. 10 nominations, but it took home 6, which is more than half, but it was mostly in craft categories. No main categories for Dune Part 1. Can it change that this year? Denis Villeneuve clearly stepped up his game, so I would think for sure it would get a Best Picture nomination, although I think it's unlikely it would win, but I think it will be nominated. But does Denis Villeneuve have a genuine shot at director, right? After the Academy just finally gave Nolan his due, perhaps he's opened the door to other auteur blockbuster filmmakers. Although also maybe they don't want to give the same type of director the wins back to back. So Nolan could help and maybe even hurt Villeneuve. We'll see. Villeneuve has already been nominated once for Best Director for Arrival. Plus, as I said, I think he's got a solid shot. I think in a nomination, probably not a win, but I think he'll probably be nominated just for his work. And then also Greg Fraser. He already won Best Cinematography for Dune Part 1. But did you see what he did for Part 2? My goodness, the Gladiator sequence. Those effects were done in camera. I think he's almost guaranteed a nomination, and I think there's a very good chance he will win yet again. As for acting nominations, a lot of great work was done in Dune Part 2, but it's tough. It's tough for blockbusters, although again, of course, there are a couple of exceptions. I'd say that Timothée Chalamet would be the film's best bet, but this isn't his big Oscar play for the year, and I don't think he'll be pushing it as hard as his Bob Dylan movie, which we're going to talk about. And the film came out very early in the calendar year. I mean, Javier Bardem was instrumental in making this film work. He was incredible. He became an instant meme. But I don't know if he can get a nomination. Again, because this is a blockbuster. Warner Brothers would have to aggressively campaign for him. And I don't know if they will. Sometimes they don't want to spend the money because they don't feel it's really possible. What a shame. Would you spend money to promote Javier Bardem? I mean, I think they're going to be promoting the film overall. So I'd be like, come along for the ride, Javier. Let's see what happens. All right, although speaking of actors and blockbusters, two actors, have won an Oscar for playing the Joker. So maybe Lady Gaga, I like these odds, might be able to finally win for playing the female Joker, Harley Quinn. So yes, let's talk Joker 2. The first Joker movie, also big Oscar contender, 11 nominations and 2 wins, score, but also actor. However, speaking of Joaquin Phoenix, this scandal with him that's just erupted, where he backed out of an LGBT film last minute that he had brought. It was his idea to make it in the first place. But then he left a lot of talented people who are beloved by awards voters high and dry. It's going to be a huge loss for that film. So that some of you have even been asking me. So if it's occurred to some of you, I think it's definitely occurred to some awards voters. And I'm sure Warner Brothers is like, why? 2 Warner Brothers pictures right off the bat, by the way. Will this undercut Joker 2's awards chances, or maybe just hurt Joaquin Phoenix? Although not to mention, while her fans still adore her, myself included, Lady Gaga, we gotta be real here, has 2 award roles that have gone south. Her awards campaign for A Star is Born became a running gag, and House of Gucci, well, I thought she was great in the movie, and it suffered when she no longer became the focus of it. But that did not go very well for her. So even if she does a killer job in this movie, will Academy voters still be willing to take her seriously, even in a down year where, there's an opportunity and some wiggle room to really kind of do something exciting? I just don't know if she still has the same respect as an actress that she did going into A Star is Born. All right, I know some of you don't like to hear it, but I gotta be honest with you from all the different angles. All right, then there's Gladiator II. Talk about an Oscar legacy. The first film, which came out 24 years ago, got a whopping 12 nominations and won 5 Oscars, and big ones, including Best Picture and Best Actor. But Ridley Scott has a very different image as a filmmaker these days. His last director nomination was 2002 for Black Hawk Down. His last Best Picture nom, The Martian, in 2016. And he's been making a lot of movies. It's not like he took a break. He's still prolific. And one of those films was Lady Gaga's House of Gucci. Napoleon, wasn't it just laughed off the screen? I don't know how awards voters feel about him these days. And while the Gladiator II trailer is one of Paramount's most watched trailers ever, it seems that a good chunk of that, at least, was hate watching. I mean, it's scary to think that maybe a lot of it was. I think the trailer looked amazing. And I don't think that song that people took issue with is going to appear in the actual film. Although with Ridley Scott these days, you never know. But the cast is respected in Hollywood. Respected! So I think it's still too early to tell on this one. We gotta have some people actually see it and see what the buzz is. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, what about Wicked? It's based off an extremely successful and respected Broadway musical, and it's a lavish, show-stopping production. But John M. Chu and Ariana Grande? This is not Oscar-caliber talent. I guess they were putting a package together. John M. Chu got this off of Crazy Rich Asians, although that wasn't a big, huge Oscar contender itself. I guess Universal maybe was building it for box office success, but you'd think they would have kept a little bit of an eye on its awards chances. Also, this is a part 1, even though they're not really advertising it that way. It is going to be 2 films. It's not complete. Although that didn't affect Dune. All right, so anyway, Cynthia Erivo, though, she is very strong talent for the Oscars. I know that some audiences still take issue with her. Has that blown over? I know some of you said that you would never forgive her for some of her comments about, you can look it up. It was a mistake. But anyway, she does have 2 Oscar nominations, actress in song. She has a Primetime Emmy nomination. She's won a Grammy and she's won a Tony. So Cynthia Erivo, she can act and she sure can sing. So talented. Plus she got the juicy role of Elphaba, which made Idina Menzel a household name and paved the way for her to get Frozen. In fact, many people feel that Frozen was an homage to Wicked and beat it to mainstream audiences first. It's almost like, will Wicked be John Carter to Star Wars, right? Or Superman. Very interesting. Even though it's the original, it gets to the mainstream last. Interesting. Arriva, though, is on a lot of shortlists for Best Actress. So she's the best shot at a main nomination for this movie. And Wicked has a shot also, I think, at a lot of craft nominations like costumes and production design, hair and makeup. As for picture, sometimes they can go as high as 10 nominees. And I think if this is very well received by critics and audiences, I think it does have a shot at a Best Picture nomination. Inside Out 2, pretty much a lock for Best Animated Feature, but it's so successful, so beloved, and again, in a year where maybe some interesting, different stuff can happen, can Inside Out 2 reach for more? Again, a lot of this is going to depend on whether or not, I tell you always, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Academy voters, unfortunately, don't dig deep as to what they think might be something they should reward. They go to the events that are held by the studios that are campaigning, and then, that's where they decide to vote. So Disney Pixar, if they want more for Inside Out, they're going to have to push hard for it. And that costs money and time. That's why some shingles and studios specialize in awards campaigns. All right, so far, only 3 films have ever been nominated for overall Best Picture, animated films. Beauty and the Beast, Up, and Toy Story 3. And 2 of those, as you can see, are from Pixar, so maybe they can get a third. It's almost impossible that Inside Out 2 would actually win overall Best Picture, but it would still be a very nice feather in the film's cap, and a third feather in Pixar's cap, 4th for Disney. Also, for a hot minute there, I saw some chatter about a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Maya Hawke's Anxiety. That would be a very big deal to finally start recognizing the incredible voice work that is done in feature animation. Yet, that's not the entirety of the performance. What about the animation? However, with computer animation, you might have noticed there's no more lead animator. So who else would be nominated alongside the actor or actress? And so would a win for an animated character involve 2 winners? Potentially 3? I mean, it's an interesting discussion for sure, and one that we should be having, although maybe not this year, because the momentum for Hawke, I'm not seeing it anymore. Although, again, unless Disney Pixar really makes a push for it. Do it! Do it, please! I think this would be so exciting, although I'm sure that the stunt community is like, get in line. All right, why can't we just talk? Again, let's talk. These are interesting things. All right. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down below. All right, so those are the blockbusters that I think have the best shot at Oscar gold this year, at least nominations. Now, how about the movies this year that have been designed as Oscar contenders? And of course, as I said, these movies come from smaller studios or shingles within a larger studio where they specialize in awards films. They've got that sweet, sweet Rolodex. They have a machine. Speaking of machines, they have one up and running that they dust off every year. So that's why their films typically are the frontrunners. Because again, as I said, it's a system. It's a system. All right, so Searchlight, now owned by Disney, but with the same talent very much behind the scenes. So, they didn't miss a beat when it comes to awards campaigning. Searchlight doesn't always have a great year, but very often they do. And their big contender is A Complete Unknown, where James Mangold will see if he can do a repeat of Walk the Line, which was nominated for 5 Oscars and 1 for Reese Witherspoon. This is the one where they're hoping to get Timmy C that Oscar for portraying Bob Dylan. He's already been nominated before for Call Me By Your Name, and he's doing his own singing. Although we already know he can sing, Thank You Very Much, thanks to Wonka, where I thought he deserved a nomination for that. Although here, he has to capture Bob Dylan's unique sound, but based on the first trailer, it seems that he does. There's also a lot of chatter, though, about Edward Norton for this film. Ooh, here comes a hiccup. And while Edward Norton has been nominated for an Oscar 3 times, he ain't never won. The Academy loves to dole out Oscars to actors at this later stage of their career, when they take that small supporting role, helping up a up-and-coming actor, and then really shine. And, the Academy's like, oh yeah, Edward Norton. I don't know much longer he'll be working. We better give him an Oscar. So yoink! I think that Edward Norton might end up getting Timmy's Oscar, because the Academy, as we know, loves to spread the Oscars around to many different films. So, sometimes there's a sweep, but more often than not, there isn't. So this could be a Complete Unknown's win for Edward Norton, not Timmy C. All right, so Edward Norton's like, you too, Timmy C, can have 3 nominations where you never won. All right, Searchlight also has a real pain where there's a lot of buzz, particularly for Kieran Culkin, who is on a roll from Succession to Oscar buzz to his upcoming Broadway, Glengarry Glen Ross. I mean, wow. And Night Bitch, where Amy Adams thinks she's a dog. Amy Adams is an awards darling, but really? Let's see if Searchlight can sell that one. That's going to take a lot of campaigning, but Adams is a pro. Then A24, the tiny studio that has already a legion of fans, but Everything Everywhere All at Once was a big breakthrough for them on the awards circuit. They've always been a good awards contender, but they're becoming an awards powerhouse. Did Civil War, though, come out too early? And was it too much of a box office play, potentially? It's hard to tell. If Trump wins in November, I can see this film getting a third wind, because it's already gotten a second wind on digital from all the political events over the summer. But if Harris wins, I think everyone might be eager to just move on from all the turmoil at that point. I still think that Kirsten Dunst is this movie's best shot at a nomination, but as of right now, she's on very few, if any, Oscar shortlists. So I see a future where maybe Civil War is entirely ignored. I had a big problem with that film. I think that it didn't choose a side. It really wasn't about Civil War. It was actually more about photojournalism. And I think that was misleading. And I had a lot of problems with the film for that reason. And I suspect Academy voters at the end of the day, when they're deciding what to vote for, will say, Civil War was certainly interesting and got a lot of attention, but its refusal to actually say anything of merit about the subject matter it pretended to be about is a real problem. All right, A24 also has Sing Sing, based on the real-life rehabilitation through the arts program at Sing Sing Maximum Security Prison. Colman Domingo's star is definitely on the rise, although I don't know if this is his moment, because the real chatter here is for Clarence Macklin, who plays himself, because he really went through that program at Sing Sing. That's the kind of story that, the journey that the Oscar voters love. From prisoner to Oscar nominee, and maybe even winner. I think that's a very good shot that will happen. And what about challengers from Amazon MGM? Zendaya worked very hard to put this film together, not only as its star, but also its producer. But it might be one of her two little white boys who gets a nom instead. That line was incredible. She delivered it so well, but in some ways, it has come back to haunt her a little bit. It's almost like Dwayne Johnson's The Hierarchy of the DC Universe. We love Zendaya fans only over here, though. Mike Faist has gotten a lot of attention from fans for his work here, but so far the industry seems to have zeroed in on Josh O'Connor. I would say he's this film's best shot at a nomination, but the Oscar odds for this film overall are slim. I suspect, like Civil War, it probably won't be remembered by the time we get to the to Oscar nominations. And Sony is going to really push Saturday Night, which tells the real-life behind-the-scenes story of the very first SNL broadcast in real time. That's why they're like in the trailer, 90 minutes to showtime. Well, get ready to see those 90 minutes. You might be like, how true is this? Well, it seems that SNL Studios, even though this is being distributed by Sony and not NBC Universal, SNL Studios is listed as one of the producers of the film. So it looks like Lorne Michaels weighed in. Although some of the Saturday Night Live cast likes to, they get into some arguments. Like, for instance, Chevy Chase is very difficult these days. And, it would not behoove the film for him to speak out against it. Although, so far, everyone's that's Riddler from Gotham. I'm so happy for that actor. So far, people are loving the Chevy Chase sequences. So I think Chevy Chase should just let it roll. All right, so anyway, though, one other problem for this movie potentially is that it's from the talent behind the new Ghostbusters movies. Because, it's been a minute since Jason Reitman was an awards darling. And Gil Kenan, he's never been an awards darling. But as I said, this is a very juicy subject matter, and I think it comes across as very artistic, and I think it could be very, very interesting. The casting is excellent across the board, especially, while I do like the Chevy Chase personification, Gabriel LaBelle, who played young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans, is Lorne Michaels. And I think besides a possible picture and screenplay nomination, he's probably the film's best shot at a nomination. Again, we have to see how the movie comes together. A couple of other movies have tried to do this. A lot of people are already saying it seems very similar to Steve Jobs. And we'll see. We'll see how I think the reaction from critics and audiences is going to be key here. And again, the people who are portrayed in the movie. All right, now it's time to talk about the films that aren't even on your radar just yet, but are on the Oscar radar with pundits pushing them really hard. Already. All right, so Steve McQueen is back with a film called Blitz, which takes place during World War II in McQueen's native London. Both Saoirse Ronan and Harris Dickinson already have awards buzz for this film. In fact, Ronan is also getting a lot of buzz for The Outrun as well, and so it seems she's almost guaranteed at least one nomination in 2025. Thank goodness, Saoirse Ronan. It's about time she got recognized for her talent. Then, turns out Denzel has another son, Malcolm Washington, who has written and directed a film called The Piano Lesson, which follows a family in 1936 Pittsburgh. Malcolm's brother John David has some buzz, as does Samuel L. Jackson. But the real buzz is for Danielle Deadwyler, who you might recall was infamously snubbed for Till. This would be a great opportunity for the Academy to right that wrong and expect them to take it. Nickel Boys also has a lot of buzz, which tells the story of a real-life notorious reform school in 1960s Florida. Hamish Linklater is in this, and Fred, whatever, from The White Lotus. But also, Ethan Heresy stars, and he's the one who has the most buzz for an Oscar nomination so far. And yeah, there's been a lot of films about the Pope, or popes. I'm a little poped out. I didn't even watch those movies, but I'm like, a lot of Pope coverage. Are you poped out? But here comes another one. Conclave, and apparently it's the greatest movie ever made. That's right, this movie has buzz for a Best Picture nomination, a Director nomination, Adapted Screenplay, Ray Fiennes for Actor, Stanley Tucci, the Tooch, and Isabella Rossellini for Supporting. My goodness! This is from Focus, who are also very good at the Oscar game, but this is an incredible amount of Oscar heat. Sounds like we gotta see it! All right, then, while non-English language films have, of course, historically done very well at the Oscars and had breakout moments, Anatomy of a Fall proved that they can dominate across the board. And this year, Emilia Perez might be that film. This is a French film as well, a musical crime comedy. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. But it's in Spanish. It's a Spanish language film. Zoe Saldana is part of the cast. So is Selena Gomez, by the way, but I'm sorry, no awards buzz for her. But Zoe Saldana, now of course she's been in some of the biggest movies of all time, but she's never really gotten a lot of respect for her acting. But it might be that that's about to change, as she's on everybody's shortlist for Best Supporting Actress. And not just Saldana, but the film has buzz in almost all the major categories: picture, director, writing. It's a really big deal. But the only hurdle is that Netflix got the North American distribution rights. And the industry doesn't love how they tend to bury films on streaming. Like, will Emilia Perez get a very good theatrical release? I think it's unfortunately unlikely. And that could really hurt its chances. Although it's so high up on people's shortlists, I think it might still do well. All right, finally, the long shots. A while back, Angelina Jolie, starring as the legendary opera singer Maria Callas, would be a guaranteed nomination. But these days, her personal drama, which has always fueled her career, might have finally eclipsed it. Although director Pablo Larraín did get Oscar noms for Kristen Stewart and Natalie Portman. Not wins. And of course, Angelina Jolie already famously has an Oscar, but maybe a nomination. Again, long shots. Demi Moore has been getting a lot of press for The Substance, but maybe she's still in the early comeback stage. And speaking of a comeback, Gia Coppola, I'm not talking about Gia, I'm talking about Pamela Anderson, but Gia Coppola is the director of this film. Sophia's niece, Francis Ford's granddaughter. And she directs Pamela Anderson in The Last Showgirl, about a showgirl who has to decide what she's going to do with her life now that the show that she starred in for years upon years, is finally closing. That sounds pretty good, actually. Jamie Lee Curtis co-stars, so that's beneficial, but then also so does Dave Bautista, although maybe he's entering his late-stage Mickey Rourke stage, right? Although that didn't really work out for Mickey Rourke. But I mean, that's an interesting path. We always talk about current actors looking to previous actors' journeys for ones that they might want to follow as well. And Dave Bautista has wanted to become a more serious actor, and Mickey Rourke is actually an excellent guide for him. We'll see how the film is received when it premieres at Toronto. We Live in Time also has a tiny bit of buzz. So that's why I wanted to mention it. But I think considering all this competition that we've just gone over, I think it's going to have a hard time breaking through. Then there's also Anora. I find this film fascinating. I just discovered it making this video, and I'm very interested. Now, it seems like something from Steven Soderbergh, but it's actually from Sean Baker, building off of his The Florida Project, which got a couple of noms. But Sean Baker is still very much a Hollywood outsider. We'll see if he just campaigns really, really hard. But this film did take home the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It's said to be a realistic take on Pretty Woman. Go watch the trailer. It looks very good. And it's got a lot of buzz across the board, but especially for lead actress for Mickey Madison. She's very high up on shortlists. Neon does have a very impressive awards track record, from Parasite to Anatomy of a Fall. So Anora might end up getting a ton of nominations. We'll see. I don't know how the Academy Award voters, typically the Academy voters have skewed older, but they've done a lot to try and bring in new generations of voters over the past few years. So usually, sometimes maybe the adult content would be a problem, but maybe not. Let's see. The film, so far, very strong. Finally, in animation, we have two possible wild cards. Pharrell Williams' bio, done with Legos, which I think is just genius, because I think his message is clearly very inspiring and important to get out to kids. So to have it in kid-friendly packaging, I think is not only very savvy from a business perspective, but I think, I haven't even seen the film yet, but I think it seems worthy of at least a nomination for Best Animated Feature. Because I think that's a great way to go with, animation. To bring, it's like the little golden book but I think that with more heart and more information, when they do those bios of celebrities, I just think it's really a fabulous idea. And then also Warner Brothers' Lord of the Rings animated movie, The War of the Rohirrim, which of course, it's exciting to see them getting into the adult animation space and for theatrical. It's very, very exciting. But the only problem is that we got a first look at it at the Animation Festival in France a couple of weeks ago, and it looks like we might be getting a what I ordered, what actually came in the mail situation. But you know what? Maybe this is just not a great first look. Anime is doing very well with Western audiences these days, so it might still work out. We'll find out in December when it hits theaters. I think audience reaction is going to be very important here. And then also, we'll see how the critics respond to early screenings. So that's an early look at this year's Oscar race. Who are you rooting for? And have you just discovered some films that you're now even more excited about? And also, what do you think? Do you think something interesting might be able to happen, or do you think it's going to be the same old after all? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.